Someone left a comment in my last video asking, how do you unmask your autism? And I thought that was a really good question and deserves a video. I'm sorry, I don't remember who asked the question. It got lost in the comments. My name is Amanda, and this is a vlog of my late autism and ADHD diagnosis. And so what that means is that I'm not a medical expert. This is just my lived experience. And what I have to say in this video may not apply to all autistic people. I am one autistic person, and we are all extremely different, but we do share a lot of common traits. I have a playlist about common autistic traits. And of course, the traits are distinct from diagnostic criteria, meaning that you can share traits with an autistic person and not be autistic if you don't meet the diagnostic criteria. So anyway, I am now 1 year and like 8.5-ish months. My autistic brain wants to be very precise with that, but post-diagnosis. So I got diagnosed with autism and ADHD at the age of 42. And I mentioned this in my last video, but just in case you haven't seen that one, for me and a lot of other autistic people, we were completely unaware of the mask that our brains created. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but I just want to compare that there are a lot of autistic people who do have some sort of sense, or maybe very blatantly know that they are masking their weirdness. They may not know that they're autistic, but they feel like something about me is not acceptable, so I'm not going to show that to the public in general. So they know they are masking. They know that they act differently in front of some people or in front of all people, and they like get to be their own selves, maybe at home, or maybe home isn't a safe environment, and so they mask really heavily at home, but around certain friends, they get to kind of like let loose and be themselves. But like I said, for me, I was completely unaware that I was masking. I am what is known as a very high masking autistic person. I just realized I was talking with my hands a lot, so I'm going to get out one of my fidgets because having something in my hands really helps my brain be able to talk. So the question was, how do you start to unmask? So what I mean by the fact that I had no idea I was masking is that, again, I'm not a medical expert, but this is kind of how internally it feels to me, and everything that I've kind of been able to piece together about the brain as somebody who's not a neuroscientist, but has now made a lot of friends who are neurodivergent in various different ways. Like I've made friends who have DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. I have friends who have bipolar, histrionic personality disorder, and of course ADHD, and there's other ones too. So masking is a trauma response. And when you are an undiagnosed autistic, and this also, a lot of ADHD people can have a type of mask too, basically your brain goes into a survival mode and it starts creating what is colloquially known as the autistic mask. And for a lot of people, myself included, this can include a lot of dissociation. So that's why I wasn't even aware that I was masking. And I think having friends who have DID, dissociative identity disorder, has really kind of like helped me kind of see how, what's the right word? The word coming to mind is pervasive, but I want to say powerful masking in our brains can be. Because, and I'm not a DID expert, but a lot of people with DID don't get diagnosed until they're like late 20s, because their brain is so good at hiding DID. And if you don't know, DID used to be called multiple personality disorder. It's a childhood trauma disorder that happens when a child has a prolonged exposure to traumatic events at a certain age, and the brain, and I'm not saying, I don't know if this is the right word exactly, but basically like it fractures into different people. I talked with one of my friends who has DID, and she said that fractured isn't actually the best description. She said, alters are created as a survival mechanism by the brain, resulting in an unintegrated personality created by dissociative barriers. And so there are multiple people that grow up independently that share one brain, and they kind of take turns like being who is in the front, present, talking, and then they will have switches. And it's way more complex than that. I am simplifying it. But the brain is so good at masking that this happens in childhood, and people don't know that they have this severe of a disorder oftentimes until they're 20, when their mask starts to break down, when they just can't keep it up. There's too many discrepancies. People are like, why are you always changing? You always act different. Different things will clue them in that something is wrong. They will have huge gaps of missing time, things like that. But it's to show that the brain is that good sometimes at masking. So for me, my autistic mask was completely hidden from me. One of my favorite words ever is being like, and ways of being is like authentic. Like I always strive to be authentic. Like to me, it was so important. I always wanted to be authentic. And I was being as authentic as I could as a masked autistic person. But the thing is, I wasn't being authentic because I was masked even from my own self. The only clue I ever really had that I was masked was that people would always say that I was so perfect, because one of my masks was always to present myself as somebody who was perfect. But on the inside, I knew I wasn't perfect, but I would project perfectionism to people in my life. And so that's what they got to see. And I would be so confused because I'm like, I'm not perfect. Why does everyone think I'm perfect? And I couldn't even see that my mask was doing things to make it look like I was perfect. Like if I had friends come over, my house was going to be absolutely spotless. And I mean, I could go in and give you a billion examples of the things that I would do so it would look like I was perfect. But I was dissociated from the fact that like, that's why people thought I was perfect. That I never showed people that I wasn't. Just it never, my mask would not allow me to show people the imperfect side of myself. The mask is extremely powerful. It is a protection mechanism that is created by the brain to try to make an autistic person be as normal as possible, to integrate, assimilate into society, and not stand out. That is like the purpose of the autistic mask, the survival technique, and it can do an amazing job. So you might be asking, well, why would you want to unmask if it's helping you in society? I'm pausing because I do need to have this caveat that in our current society, it is not safe for every single person to unmask, unfortunately. There are certain people who might lose their job, even though, autism is supposed to be protected. It's just a fact that some people, if they were to unmask and be their full, authentic, autistic self, they would lose their job. People could lose support systems, marriages. They could be considered a threat out in public. If you are a very large, male-presenting autistic person and you're dysregulated and you're stimming in public, People will perceive that you are dangerous, maybe that you're drunk, that you're like out of your mind, when you're really just having an autistic meltdown. And, you know, some autistic meltdowns can be dangerous. But the reason why, okay, hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself. So yes, so unfortunately right now, it isn't completely safe for everybody to unmask, and that needs to be talked about and acknowledged, because unmasking is the most healthy thing an autistic person can do, and we need to normalize autism so that people can understand and see what autism looks like across the spectrum, and that people can get support to unmask, and that maybe things like a big meltdown in public wouldn't even happen if the person had the right accommodations and their nervous system was regulated enough that the meltdown could be prevented. And no, not all meltdowns can be prevented, because you never know what's going to cause a meltdown. So for me, in my experience, I got diagnosed at 42, but my mask actually started to crack around 40. Around the age of 40, I started to realize that I wasn't like, I started to ask, who am I? And it sounds kind of like a midlife crisis, but the reason why is because I was not creating myself. What's the right word? I'm struggling with words today. My mask was creating my personality. It wasn't me. I've said this so many times. I felt like I was a shell of a person. When I started to look at my life, I'm like, what do I stand for? What are things that are important to me? What am I doing with my life? Like these important questions, but I couldn't answer them because my mask never let me have strong opinions about things, because I had to be a people pleaser for everybody. So while I've always felt very passionate about being a disability advocate, I would always do it just really subtly. Like I would leave little comments here and there. Like I couldn't vocally be a loud and proud disability advocate because I could not enter into any conversation that would lead to controversy. My mask I would have a shutdown, and I wouldn't be able to continue the conversation. So, and even the fact that like talking about disability is controversial is like really frustrating, but it is. But that's just that, like, you know, I've always been an LGBTQ plus ally, and now I've unmasked to the fact that I've learned that I'm actually queer and bisexual. So that was a big, huge unmasking moment for me. But even that, the reason why it was unmasked from my view is because while I deep down wanted to align myself and be part of the LGBTQ community, my mask at the most would allow me to say I was an ally, because that was still sort of safe in our society. Because again, the mask is all about being safe, and everybody knows that in our current society, being a loud, proud, out LGBTQ person is not always the safest direction you can go. So of course, my mask like absolutely hid that from my view. So there was all these like things that I would feel kind of sort of deep down, and they were starting to bubble up to the surface around the age 40. And I all of a sudden started hitting an autistic burnout too. And I was really struggling to maintain the life that I had. I was like homeschooling my kids, and I was struggling to maintain that. I was struggling, like every single aspect of my life started just fall apart. Like my brain basically hit max. And that's why masking is so important, because it is a trauma response, and it basically keeps your brain in a heightened sense of stress for your entire life. And everybody knows, studies, you can find many studies on the fact that too much stress levels causes permanent brain damage. which is why when your brain hits a burnout, because basically the stress levels are so high that it's done, then you start to hit skill regressions, because now you are actively causing brain damage to your brain. And I have a video that I talk about autistic burnout and skill regression more succinctly. So the reason why you want to unmask is because keeping yourself in that mask state just will keep continuing to keep the stress levels up, and eventually, lead to little mini burnouts or big, huge mental crisis burnout, which is where I was headed. Like, I was at mini burnouts and I was heading to a big, huge, I could feel it brewing. And at 42 is when I got diagnosed. And then I started to okay, I need to start learning how to regulate my nervous system, which is basically what unmasking is. It's like doing all the things that I can do to let my autistic traits be out and natural and regulate my nervous system. And for me, this looked like learning to say no to things that I didn't want to do, because I would be a people pleaser. So I would say yes to everything and then just try to make it work. And then I would get anxious and stressed and whatever, all negative stuff to make this thing happen, because now I've already said yes to it. So learning to kind of ask myself, is this something I really want to do? Do I really want to do this thing? And then, answer yes or no. Not be afraid to ask clarifying questions. A lot of people really do not understand why autistic people ask clarifying questions. They think we are questioning your authority, when in fact, we need to know everything that our brain is asking about a situation so that we can feel calm and regulated going to that event or doing that thing. So we are going to ask lots of questions, and some of them are very, very specific, and sometimes people don't have answers, and we have to be okay with that. But sometimes that helps too. If nobody knows the answer, then it's okay, well, then we're all going to be figuring this out. But if there is an answer to something that seems like a very weird question, sometimes I won't go to something if I'm I need to know, will there be bathrooms there? A lot of autistic people have bowel issues. IBS is a very common autistic problem. And for me, it comes and goes. But there was going to be a park meetup, and I'm does this park have a bathroom? If it doesn't, then I need to plan around that. I can't just show up and be oh, is there a bathroom here? I need to know that in advance. And most neurotypical people will just go with the flow, but an autistic person can't. So I'm now allowing myself to ask those things, so that way I don't have to stress about it. I can plan accordingly. Adding fidgets to my life has been a really huge way to unmask, and using them out in public and not being who cares? What else have I done to using ear protection? And that's one that I slowly, sometimes there's a part of me is I don't want to get out the earplugs, because I also do want to be aware of all my surroundings. But sometimes I'm no, I need to. And I'll put the earplugs in and I'm oh my gosh. I could just instantly just feel everything get better, because it's noises that were running in the background just suddenly it just relaxes my entire body. Another one for me is kind of like the first one, but noticing when you're doing things to people please. Notice when your brain is trying to conform itself into what somebody else wants you to be or think. So this can be from family members, friends, and just societal norms. So a lot of my mask was created not because of things that were important to my family, but because of societal norms. So a lot of my mask was be a good little girl. And it wasn't the values of my mom, unfortunately, because she really was never big on gender roles. She was way ahead of her time in that. But society told me what a little good girl should do. And so my mask created me to be the perfect good little girl. You know, I didn't talk about sex. I didn't do drugs. I didn't smoke. I mean, some of these things I'm thankful my mask prevented me from doing. A lot of autistic people do actually turn to smoking and drugs for peer acceptance. But my good little girl mask like overrode all of that. Like it was super strong. Like I was gonna be a good little girl no matter what, to the detriment of even having friends and fitting in. Health-wise, I'm very thankful, but yes, I did, you know, stand out quite a bit amongst my peer groups because of the things that my good little girl mask did, especially in high school. Oh yeah, but the thing is, like, so finding all these things that are expectations put on you by outside influences and then questioning them and saying, like, is this something I actually agree with? Or is this something that is an expectation of society that my mask has created for me? So yeah, I'm not interested in drugs or smoking. Like to me, that is not something, and I don't smoke weed, which has now been much more widely accepted. But for me, it's just not something I never say never, but like I can't imagine, especially smoking it. I think the smell is vile. I hate cigarette smoke. I know a lot of my autistic audience smokes because, again, a lot of people use drugs and like cigarettes and alcohol to self-regulate because they were undiagnosed. And these are things that happen. And I'm not judging. I'm just telling you my mask and my personal, like, what works for me. The funny one is, and I do have a video on religion. So I grew up in, Texas, which is a very religious state. And my mask really struggled on that one because, again, this I think is where I also have pathological demand avoidance. And I think my pathological demand avoidance would overkick my mask in this instance, because my mask would want me to be a good little, Christian, except I never ever have believed in God. And I think PDA actually kind of would override my mask in this one, except I still did mask and would pretend. So in Texas, it's very common for people to come up to you and ask you what church you go to. And I would answer things like, oh, I haven't been to church recently, or I'm in between churches, depending on like who it was or what. I would say those things instead of just saying, I don't believe in God, because my mask could never, ever let me be that truthful. I am only recently out as an atheist because of my mask. So that was another part of unmasking, is to be more like owning the fact that I'm an atheist instead of like it being a hidden thing. Quite similar to how a lot of LGBTQ people are closeted. I don't think I was closeted from being LGBTQ because my mask didn't even let me see that at all. That I really feel I unmasked. It was like a big, huge aha moment. Not like a secret desire. And a lot of that, and that could be a whole nother video, but a lot of that has to do with black and white thinking, misinformation, against societal standards, the fact that like we as a society objectify women. I thought everyone was attracted to women the way I was. And men, like it's normal for me to be attracted to a man. So I didn't question that. That's like a trying to think of the right heteronormative way for women to be. But my attraction to women, I thought, because I'm a black and white autistic thinker, was just like similar to how everybody says that women are beautiful. I didn't realize that like there was a whole nother level going on for me. It just uncovered, unmasked. Oh, okay. Interestingly enough, the video that I posted about religion, I only lost like 10 followers on. The video that I posted about coming out bisexual, I lost like 50 followers in a day on that video. That is sad, people. That is so sad. But here's part of unmasking too, is literally just coming into your own and not caring what people think anymore. Because unmasked Amanda would have cared so deeply, so deeply. This is also a reason why society doesn't like unmasked autistic people, because I have a couple different videos talking about social constructs. Autistic people just naturally tend to see past social constructs. And when you have people in your society who can see past and break down social constructs, it kind of like is disruptive to society. So having people who don't really give a flip about the social constructs can be seen as a threat to society at large. And when women particularly don't care what other people think about them, wow, society doesn't like that at all. They want to shove us back into that little autistic, compliant, people-pleasing box. And you can see why that's not good for your brain. So I feel like there's so much more, but it's really just paying attention to when you get dysregulated, trying to see if you can figure out why you got dysregulated, working backwards so that you can then now break that down so you can prevent it in the future, trying to quiet all of the noise of society and tune into what you want. And the thing is, it might be scary. You might uncover things that you don't want to know about yourself. Luckily, I've always been an LGBTQ ally, but you might uncover that, oh my gosh, I have been part of this community that you didn't know about. It's like the circle of autistic and LGBTQ Venn diagram is like almost a circle. Scientists are studying that, but it's true. And I think it does, again, go back to some social construct stuff, especially around gender. There's a lot of trans and non-binary autistic people. I fully identify as cis, but that is a very big portion of autistic people. So as you unmask, some of it can be confronting to even your own self, and it might take you a while to sit with it and realize your own truths. That especially if you uncover something that you know a partner or family members are really going to struggle with, that can make it even harder for you to unmask it for yourself. And it may take a while. But in the end, unmasking as much as you can in spaces that you can, allowing yourself to stim, finding quiet spaces to regulate your system after busy days, making sure you put on your calendar, like if you have a big like event on a Sunday, if you know, either not scheduling big things on Sundays, if you know you have to work on Monday, or finding a way that you know Monday can be more of a relaxing day if that is in your autonomy to do so. Like scheduling recovery times that sometimes are days and weeks depending on what it is literally part of unmasking, and it's part of regulating your nervous system. Anyway, I hope this video has been useful. I am still on my unmasking journey. I do not know if I'll ever be a complete, I'm fully baked unmasked person. I still see myself masking up in certain situations. My mask has been 40 years in the making. It's gonna take a while to unmask. I still go in burnout. I feel like I'm like coming out of some of the burnout, but then there are days where I'm like back down at the bottom and I'm like, but it's a process. It is a long. Okay, just as I put up my mic and put up my tripod, I immediately took off my earrings and threw my hair up in a bun. And I'm like, oh, I need to add this to the video. Another way to unmask is to really be in tune with your sensory. And so I like having my hair down because I think it's pretty, but sensory wise, it bothers me. So I wear my hair up in a bun most of the time. And I can wear earrings a lot of times, but the ones that I chose for this video actually were kind of bothering me. So as soon as the video was done, I took them out, and now my ears are kind of swollen and hurting. And this is not the same as a neurotypical person who is coming home from a day of work and changing into like more comfortable clothes. For an autistic person who is tolerating things that are causing sensory dysregulation, it's going to be constantly running in the background. Like through that entire video, I was aware of those earrings. So I was still choosing to mask my discomfort for that video because I thought the earrings were cute, which is kind of probably like silly because behind my hair, you might not have even noticed them. For my blind viewers, there are these acrylic, like fake butterfly wings, and they are teal and blue, and they match my teal and purple. They're teal, blue, and purple, and they match my teal, purple, and blue eyeshadow, and they have sparkles, and they're so cute that I wanted to wear them. So as you're unmasking, sometimes you can choose purposefully when you are going to mask some things because you can weigh the dysregulation that you know it's going to cause you. But choosing to mask is very, very different than when your brain is masking for you as a survival trauma response. But taking time to become more aware of your sensory needs, like switching all our laundry detergent to unscented, and I only have natural essential oil like candles, and getting rid of any clothing that I'm constantly like, well, all clothing is going to trying to find the most comfortable clothing is also part of my unmasking journey. Long process. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Until the next one, bye.